So step one is to crack your brew and take a drink. Step two, collect your materials. So you got a heat gun with a nozzle, something to press your plastic into this crack, which I use a masonry tool and a little roller that is for connecting seams on carpet or vinyl. And then I've got a Dremel tool that has a kind of a spiral bit on it that eats into the plastic to give you your groove. And then you're also going to need a drill with a small bit on it as well to drill the ends of your cracks. Step three is to identify your cracks. I got a crack here, which is on an old weld, a crack here that's on an old weld, and this one looks kind of mysterious here. Not sure if it's fully a crack yet, but I'm probably just going to put some plastic over top of it, just groove it out a little bit, put a little bit of plastic on it, fill it, just to make sure if it is a crack and you strengthen it. So here's one of the old welds. It was a long weld that Alex did, and there's a new crack in it. And then here is one of my old welds, and you can see the straight line there where it's cracked again. This weld, there's two welds here. They seem to be holding up pretty good. This looked like it was starting to crack or might become cracked. It was a deep groove, and I just cut a groove in it and put some plastic on top of it just to make sure. That was a huge crack there that I welded, and got a membrane to stick over top of it from, I can't remember the name of the company, but anyway, I might take that off today and just check to make sure that it hasn't cracked again underneath. There we go. So now the cracks here, I'm going to drill a hole in the ends of the cracks, and you want to do that to make sure that your cracks do not continue to run even if you fill them, and you don't I guess put a stopper at the end of the crack. You run the potential of the crack spreading or coming back and getting even longer. So I'm just drilling a hole at the end of the cracks, which will be filled with plastic here shortly. So sometimes it gets kind of tricky when the cracks are all jagged and going wonky in different directions. Right. And being that I'm not taking the seat out, I need to be careful that I'm not going to drill a hole into the bottom of my seat. Go. So I'm about to just cut a groove in that crack. And when you punch these holes in there, or when you drill those holes in there, it also makes it easier to have a starting point to make your groove. Because a lot of times if you don't have that hole and then you're starting to cut the groove, especially if it's zigzagging and stuff, sometimes it gets difficult unless you've got a big crack. This is actually looks like a pretty decent crack. Also helps if you have good lighting in your shop, which I do not. tips on that paddle. And this is a beautiful knife. It's really good to have a sharp knife around because you need it for a lot of different things. While I'm on it, the two halves of my paddle, there you go. Okay, will we ever be able to repair this bad boy? Oh my gosh. A lot of times whenever you start to use a drill bit to cut a groove, it actually heats up the plastic and seals it. But don't be tricked by that, because it's not a true seal. The crack is still there. My buddy Alex, usually when he does these, he carves it and creates a gap. He completely goes through the boat. I try not to do that. I press it just so if it did create a seal, that'll bring the crack back again. I'll re-crack it. And then once I get that groove nice and smooth, then I'm going to lay some plastic on it. Sometimes it's nice to keep these shavings because then you can kind of shove them into those drill holes and then let it melt through whenever you start to heat it up. Let's see what we got here. So that's your groove right there. And you can kind of see, well, maybe it's hard to see with this camera, but with the flex you can see that the two sides move independently. So now I'm gonna, on my demo, I'm gonna put out another bit on it which is a little bit finer, so I can get down a little deeper inside this crack, go more vertical. And then I should be able to start melting some plastic in there and bringing the two sides back together. So this next part, got a piece of plastic here from, this is actually from a canoe deck. Guy he got a plastic canoe, had a deck on it, cut it off, and he made strips for us to fix our kayaks. Before that, we were cutting plastic off our cockpit rims, but we found out that as we kept cracking our boats, our cockpit rims were getting pretty thin. So anyway, now people over at the local kayak shop, they've got some of our broken boats. I got a bunch of broken boats on the fence line, and they've been cutting us pieces of plastic to fix our boats too, off the broken boats that are there. Be careful, you need to melt the end of the plastic strip that you're adding in here. So I'm going to melt this till it gets soft. You don't want to melt it up too fast. You don't want super high heat because if it gets too hot, it will make the plastic brittle. Be careful when you're putting it in here. You want to try to keep the heat directed at this piece of plastic and not the boat. You do want to heat the boat up a little bit, but you don't want to heat the boat up a lot because it'll start to warp and buckle. And if the heat is too high, you'll end up burning a hole in your boat, which is not good. So you want to try to focus your heat on this. And then whenever you are laying it into the hole in the groove, you want to twist it and spin it to get it to spin and make a thin bead to run in there. All right, and then as you go, this job is better with two people. As you go, you need to stop and either press the plastic down into that groove or roll it down in there. It's best if you have 4 hands instead of 2. And then occasionally, this is going to start, when it heats up, it's going to start to bubble up on me, and I'm just going to take a piece of wood and I'll stop and I'll press it down and kind of flatten it out. All right, so here we go. First, start off with the hole. Try to plug that hole that you created. The boat is starting to bubble right there. I think I'm just going to start and pause right here. So press that. Plastic down in there. careful because your boat gets really soft.
Once again, crew, we're taking you through some classic sounds from V and associated labels. Might even sprinkle a little movement flavor in here in just a little bit. Unless you were under a rock or maybe you weren't born at this time, who knows? It could have been anything legitimate like that. You wouldn't have heard this, but otherwise, this is Secrets of the Floating Island. My main man, Michael XRS.
Break my nice cedar.
And this was 100% different back in the day, and it still is. This is a standout right here.
Why is that not dropping? There's a little twist there, plastic, a little thin twist that I'm going to try to jam down in that hole that I drilled. Soft that is now. I'll be careful because every time you weld, the boat gets thinner and thinner. And you don't want that big bulge in the bottom because that's just going to catch rock. This isn't, I didn't learn this technique from anybody. This is what Alex and I do. We just press it back into shape when it is hot, so we don't get a big bubble, big bulge. So I'm just going to lean on this for a while, and then we'll hit the other hole. Go. So now I've got the bottom pretty much flattened out, the little bulge here, but it's a little indentation here. Anyway, got it flattened out to where I like it. Some of my buddies, they just stop here, they just leave it as is. Myself personally, I like to sand it, or at least sand the edges. You don't want to sand too much because you're taking plastic off your boat, but I like to sand around the edges and just make sure it's smooth, so when I'm boofing a rock or whatever, I'm not catching a lip or an edge or something where it's trying to rip the plastic off, right? So I put it on my lowest, slowest setting, which is not that slow, and then I just kind of work it over the edges, try to make a smooth transition. You'll see little indentations, and he would say, get your plastic rod back out and fill those indentations in. I don't bother. Whenever I go boating, I'll just slap some duct tape over top of this to help protect it, and usually by the time I'm off the river, most if not all of the duct tape is gone, and then I just tape it again. However, However, you know what? After 4, 5, 6, 7 trips through rocky creeks, creek boating, it's probably gonna break again anyway. Alright, so anyway, Doc, that's it. Let me give you a close-up of what the finished product looks like here. So that's what I'm looking at right here, that weld job. And then like Alex would say, hey, these little divots and all that stuff there, he would be taking this plastic rod and filling those in, but I'm not gonna bother. Time to go boating again. Well, no, wait, I got crack number 2 that I'm gonna work on. But anyway, all right, man, take it easy, bro.